In 1975, a 24-year-old engineer at Kodak built something that looked like a toaster strapped to a tape deck. It weighed 8 pounds, took 23 seconds to capture a single black and white image, and stored that image on a cassette. It was the world's first digital camera. When the engineer, Stephen Sasson, showed it to Kodak's executives, they didn't celebrate, they didn't patent it aggressively, they didn't even tell anyone. They told him, quote, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it," because the device he had just invented threatened the most profitable business model in the history of consumer photography, film. 37 years later, Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, killed by the very technology it had invented and buried. This is not a story about a company that failed to see the future. This is a story about a company that saw the future, built the future, locked it in a closet, and then watched the future eat it alive. To understand how big a fall Kodak took, you have to understand how high it once stood. George Eastman founded the Eastman Kodak Company in Rochester, New York in 1888. His pitch to the consumer was almost absurdly simple. You press the button, we do the rest. Before Eastman, photography was a chemistry experiment performed by specialists with glass plates and toxic solvents. After Eastman, photography was a hobby for everyone. He didn't just sell cameras, he sold a complete system: the camera, the film inside it, the processing, the prints. He invented the razor and blades model decades before Gillette perfected it. The camera was cheap. The film was forever. By the mid-20th century, Kodak was one of the most powerful corporations on earth. Its yellow film boxes were a global icon, as recognizable as Coca-Cola Red. At its peak in 1976, Kodak controlled roughly 90% of film sales and 85% of camera sales in the United States. It employed over 145,000 people. The town of Rochester didn't just host Kodak. Rochester was Kodak. Schools, hospitals, parks, baseball teams. The company sponsored everything. The phrase Kodak moment entered the dictionary as shorthand for any memory worth preserving. And the financial engine behind that empire was film. Beautiful, profitable, repeat purchase film. Margins on film were estimated at around 70%. Every wedding, every birthday, every vacation pumped revenue into Rochester. It was, in every sense, a perpetual motion machine. And like every perpetual motion machine, it depended on the world staying exactly the same forever. In 1973, a young electrical engineer named Stephen Sasson joined Kodak's Applied Research Lab. His supervisor handed him what seemed like a throwaway project. See if a new component called a charge-coupled device, a CCD, could possibly be used to capture an image. No deadline, no expectations, no committee oversight. It was an experiment so obscure that nobody bothered to set goals for it. 2 years later, in December 1975, Sasson cobbled together a prototype using a Super 8 movie camera lens, 16 nickel-cadmium batteries, an analog-to-digital converter pulled from a digital voltmeter, and a portable cassette recorder. He pointed it at a lab assistant. 23 seconds later, a 100 by 100 pixel black and white image appeared on a television screen. It was the first photograph in human history to exist as pure digital data. No film, no chemistry, no negative. Sasson took the device to Kodak's executives. He explained that within 15 to 20 years, this technology would be commercially viable. He explained it would eventually replace film entirely. The reaction inside Kodak's boardroom has been described charitably as polite confusion. Less charitably, it was active hostility. Why would a film company champion a filmless camera? Kodak did patent the technology, and over the next 2 decades, those digital imaging patents would generate billions in licensing revenue. But the company made a deliberate, strategic choice not to commercialize digital photography. The internal logic was bulletproof, in a tragic way. Film had 70% margins, digital had no consumables, no recurring revenue, no chemistry. Why would you cannibalize the most profitable product in your portfolio to chase a technology that, by your own engineer's admission, would take 20 years to mature? So they buried it, quietly, patently, profitably. For a while, through the 1980s and into the 1990s, Kodak's leadership operated under a comforting fiction. Digital photography was real, but it was a niche. It would serve professionals, journalists, the military. Consumers, they believed, would always want prints, always want albums, always want film. That belief was reinforced by the numbers. Kodak's revenue crossed $10 billion in the early 1980s, and by 1996 it peaked at roughly $16 billion in annual sales. The company's market capitalization hit $31 billion. From inside the headquarters in Rochester, the digital threat looked like a mosquito buzzing around an elephant. Meanwhile, competitors with no film business to protect, Sony, Canon, Nikon, and a wave of Japanese electronics firms had no such hesitation. They poured R&D into digital sensors, digital storage, digital displays. Sony released the Mavica, an early electronic still camera as far back as 1981. By the late 1990s, consumer digital cameras were on shelves at every electronics store. Kodak did try, sporadically. It launched the DCS-100 in 1991, a professional digital camera built on a Nikon body priced at $13,000. It rolled out the Advantix Preview in 1996, a hybrid film and digital camera that let you preview shots on a small screen but still required film. The Advantix flopped. Customers asked the obvious question, if I can preview the picture, why do I need the film at all? Kodak's answer essentially was, because we need you to. The company kept trying to bolt digital convenience onto a film core, like installing a touchscreen on a horse-drawn carriage. Internally, the cultural rot was deeper. Executives who had spent their entire careers in chemistry and film coatings ran the company. Engineers who pushed harder on digital were sidelined or left. Consultants warned, repeatedly, that digital would not stay niche. The warnings landed in inboxes and stayed there. The collapse, when it came, was not gradual. It was a cliff. Worldwide film sales peaked in 2000. From there, the line went vertical, straight down. Within a decade, global film sales had fallen by more than 90%. Every digital camera sold was a film customer lost forever, and then came the real killer, the camera phone. In 2000, Sharp released the first commercial mobile phone with a built-in camera. By 2007, Apple launched the iPhone. By 2010, more than 1 billion people were carrying high-quality digital cameras in their pockets, attached to a device that also let them instantly share photos with friends. The Kodak moment was no longer something you developed in a lab. It was something you posted to Facebook in 3 seconds. Kodak finally panicked. In the 2000s, the company poured billions into a digital pivot. It launched the EasyShare line of consumer digital cameras and printers. It actually became, briefly, the #1 seller of digital cameras in the United States in 2005. But here's the brutal economics. Kodak was losing roughly $60 on every digital camera it sold, hoping to make it back on ink and paper for home printing. Consumers stopped printing, they started sharing on screens. The recovery plan died on contact with reality. Layoffs began in waves. Between 2003 and 2012, Kodak shed tens of thousands of jobs. Rochester hollowed out. The company sold off divisions, its medical imaging business, its document imaging business, and burned through cash trying to reinvent itself as a printer company, an inkjet company, a commercial printing company. Nothing stuck. On January 19, 2012, Eastman Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. A 132-year-old icon of American industry, the company that put a camera in every household was insolvent. To stay alive during bankruptcy, it auctioned off its crown jewels, roughly 1,100 digital imaging patents. The very patents born from Stephen Sasson's buried 1975 prototype sold for about $525 million to a consortium that included Apple, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, and Facebook. The companies that had built the digital future bought the bones of the company that had invented it. Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen coined a term for what happened to Kodak: the innovator's dilemma. The idea is simple and devastating. Successful companies become successful by serving their best, most profitable customers extremely well. That focus makes them blind to disruptive technologies that initially serve a smaller, less profitable, less demanding market. By the time the disruptive technology improves enough to threaten the core business, it's too late. The incumbent organization, culture, sales force, and shareholders are all locked into the old model. Kodak is the textbook example, the case study that gets taught in every MBA program on Earth. But it's worth being precise about what Kodak actually got wrong. They did not fail to see the future. Stephen Sasson handed them the future on a workbench in 1975. They did not fail to invest in R&D. Kodak spent billions on digital research. They did not even fail to compete. They were, briefly, the market leader in digital cameras. What they failed to do was something much harder: deliberately destroy their own most profitable business before someone else did it for them. That requires a CEO willing to tell shareholders that earnings will drop for years. It requires firing the executives who built the empire. It requires telling Rochester that the factories that fed it for a century are about to close. No public company leadership team in the 1980s or 1990s was willing to make that trade. And so Kodak chose, slowly, year after year, the comfortable death over the painful reinvention. There is one final, almost unbearable detail. Kodak's smaller Japanese rival, Fujifilm, faced the exact same disruption at the exact same time. Fujifilm responded by ruthlessly diversifying into cosmetics built on collagen chemistry from film, into pharmaceuticals, into LCD screen films, into medical imaging. Today, Fujifilm is a profitable, multi-business conglomerate worth tens of billions of dollars. Same threat, same starting position, different choice. Kodak's collapse is not a tech story. It's a human story about institutional courage and the lack of it. Every executive who chose film over digital was, individually, making a rational decision. Protect the margin, protect the jobs, protect the dividend, protect the share price this quarter. Stacked together, those rational decisions became one of the most expensive corporate suicides in American history. The next time someone tells you a legacy company is too big to fail, remember the yellow boxes. Remember sides in American history. The next time someone tells you a legacy company is too big to fail, remember the yellow boxes. Remember Stephen Sasson's 8-pound toaster. Remember that the death of an empire usually begins with a memo that says, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." If this kind of deep dive business autopsy is your thing, subscribe to Boardroom Media. We're working through the corporate graveyards one headstone at a time. Next up, we're opening the file on Blockbuster, another company that was offered its own future and politely declined. See you there.